Hello, welcome back. I left off last time reading Suetonius in the 12 Caesars, chapters 25 to 28. They're getting a little bit thicker now, so I'm probably going to read less of them. But when we left off, Caesar was courting princes all over. Uh, Marcellus was involved in trying to change something with state laws, even to the point where they got put in brass. And generally, the usual shenanigans of things were happening, but nothing stopped Caesar from moving on up. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into 29. And I think 30, because 30's pretty beefy paragraph. I think I might do 31, but we'll see where this goes. As usual, uh, I'm not an academic. If you're watching this for the first time, I'm just a blue collar worker. My name is Will. I'm reading classics for the first time, most of them, because I now take through Helen McVeigh's Classic Academy, Latin, and Greek. But I've never read most classical works, histories, poetry, etc., except for like Sappho, who I love, and a few other works. I just recently finished the Odyssey for the first time, and I'm almost done the Aeneid. But Suetonius is new, reading every paragraph for the first time, giving my just initial thoughts on it, not assuming I'm right or wrong, just first thing that comes to my mind. And anybody who wants to fill me in who is a classicist, jump on in. I'm going to start with chapter 29 and read, stop for a second, move on. So far, Caesar is moving on up. No one's stopping him. Closest is maybe Pompey, maybe Marcellus. That's about it. He's still there. He's running everything with an iron rod. That's the story. Rome can't stop him. Chapter or paragraph 29. Roused by these proceedings, and thinking, as he was often heard to say, that it would be a more difficult enterprise to reduce him, now that he was the chief man in the state, from the first rank of citizens to the second, than from the second to the lowest of all, Caesar made a vigorous opposition to the measure, partly by means of the tribunes, who interposed in his behalf, and partly through Servius Sulpicius, the other consul. The following year, likewise, when Caius Marcellus, who succeeded his cousin Marcus in the consulship, pursued the same course, Caesar, by means of an immense bribe, engaged in his defense. Aemilius Paulus, the other consul, and Caius Curio, the most violent of the tribunes. But finding the opposition obstinately bent against him, and that the consuls elect were also of that party, he wrote a letter to the Senate, requesting that they would not deprive him of the privilege kindly granted him by the people, or else that the other generals should resign the command of their armies as well as himself, fully persuaded, as it is thought, that he could more easily collect his veteran soldiers, whenever he pleased, than Pompey could his new raised troops. At the same time, he made his adversaries an offer to disband 8 of his legions and give up Transalpine Gaul, upon condition that he might retain 2 legions with the Cisalpine province, or but 1 legion with Illyricum, until he should be elected consul. So, at this point, Caesar has his own army. He has his own men loyal to him because if anybody watched previous videos, we go back a few paragraphs. He spent 9 years out in the field. He took Gaul. Uh, he did all the masterful strategist and military things that most historians praise him for, and one of the reasons why you always hear this guy's name brought up. Although, as I've said before, I think the things before all that were more interesting to me reading this, but he has legions on his side, literal legions on his side. And I'm sure that's probably got people quaking in their boots because this man is flush with power. The only person coming close to him is Pompey, who also has legions loyal to him because when he went off to battle in a completely different part of the empire. So you've got 2 people, 2 men, vastly powerful, a Senate sort of wedged in between. And I don't know, I feel like this is what waves, little waves I know throughout the history of the Roman Empire that will seem to be the Senate's position from here on out is wedged between powerful individuals and trying to stay afloat. Um, but yeah, he does his best to try to stay in power, and as we know, he does. He just gets more. But it's interesting that he drops an immense bribe. I think I said this in an earlier video. Bribery was like a common thing in the Senate. It was just part of Roman politics. Um, we now kind of shun it, even though we assume it's kind of getting done, or at least lobbying in America, where I am, which is essentially bribing. That sort of thing takes place. But I think it kind of shows that the methodology changes, but the same thing kind of goes on, and you still get the threats and so on. I don't really know if we have violent senators, though, except in speech. Hmm. Paragraph 30. But as the Senate declined to interpose in the business, and his enemies declared that they would enter into no compromise where the safety of the republic was at stake, he advanced into hither Gaul, and having gone the circuit for the administration of justice, made a halt at Ravenna, resolved to have recourse to arms if the Senate should proceed to extremity against the tribunes of the people who had espoused his cause. This was indeed his pretext for the civil war, but it is supposed that there were other motives for his conduct. Cneius Pompey used frequently to say that he sought to throw everything into confusion because he was unable, with all his private wealth, to complete the works he had begun, and answer at his return the vast expectations which he had excited in the people. Others pretend that he was apprehensive of being called to account for what he had done in his first consulship, contrary to the auspices, laws, and the protests of the tribunes. Marcus Cato having sometimes declared, and that, too, with an oath, that he would prefer an impeachment against him as soon as he disbanded his army. A report likewise prevailed that if he returned as a private person, he would, like Milo, have to plead his cause before the judges, surrounded by armed men. This conjecture is rendered highly probable by Asinius Pollio, who informs us that Caesar, upon viewing the vanquished and slaughtered enemy in the field of Pharsalia, expressed himself in these very words: "This was their intention. I, Caius Caesar, after all the great achievements I had performed, must have been condemned, had I not summoned the army to my aid." Some think that having contracted from long habit an extraordinary love of power, and having weighed his own and his enemy's strength, he embraced that occasion of usurping the supreme power, which indeed he had coveted from the time of his youth. This seems to have been the opinion entertained by Cicero, who tells us in the third book of his offices that Caesar used to have frequently in his mouth two verses of Euripides, which he thus translates: Nam si violandum est jus regnandi gratia, violandum est alias rebus pietatem colas, which is, be just, unless a kingdom tempts to break the laws, for sovereign power alone can justify the cause. Okay, well, what I know of Caesar, other than, a lifetime of people telling me, great guy, great general, killed on the Ides of March 44 before the Common Era, um, is what I got from here. And I do not assume that everything Suetonius wrote is gospel, not by far. But Suetonius has been giving us a narrative, not just Cicero, a narrative from the start, as the first Caesar listed here in the 12 Caesars, that Julius Caesar was a power hungry person from way early on. If not necessarily childhood, then definitely when he came and saw that statue of Alexander the Great and got really inadequate about it and determined from that day on he had to just keep going up in power. So Suetonius is definitely painting the picture that Caesar was a power monger. Um, I think I'll do the last two, 31 and then 32. When intelligence therefore was received that the interposition of the tribunes in his favor had been utterly rejected, and that they themselves had fled from the city, he immediately sent forward some cohorts, but privately, to prevent any suspicion of his design, and to keep up appearances, attended at a public spectacle, examined the model of a fencing school which he proposed to build, and, as usual, sat down to table with numerous party of his friends. But after sunset, mules being put to his carriage from a neighboring mill, he set forward on his journey with all possible privacy, and a small retinue. The lights going out, he lost his way, and wandered about a long time, until at length, by the help of a guide whom he found towards daybreak, he proceeded on foot through some narrow paths, and again reached the road. Coming up with his troops on the banks of the Rubicon, which was the boundary of his province, he halted for a while, and, revolving in his mind the importance of the step he was on the point of taking, he turned to those about him and said, "We may still retreat, but if we pass this little bridge, nothing is left for us but to fight it out in arms." It's very nice that the great famous "when Caesar crossed the Rubicon" statement, that of course it comes with a nice little line for posterity. That's cute. Um, again, I have to really start asking around what people think about what Suetonius wrote. I do know what a couple people have said. I've had one person tell me that it's not the best. That's how they summed him up. But I do think he really tries hard to just make a point. And I really am going to look forward to seeing how he contrasts this first Caesar with the other ones, if he tries to make the other 11 in this book similar. And paragraph 32. While he was thus hesitating, the following incident occurred. A person remarkable for his noble mien and graceful aspect appeared close at hand, sitting and playing upon a pipe. When not only the shepherds, but a number of soldiers also flocked from their posts to listen to him, and some trumpeters among them, he snatched a trumpet from one of them, ran to the river with it, and piercing blast crossed to the other side. Upon this Caesar exclaimed, "Let us go whither the omens of the gods and the iniquity of our enemies call us. The die is now cast." My man, it, because this is, I would want to say that, like, Caesar, Caesar really knows how to grab attention. They should also put Drama Queen in there with him and all these other guys who tried so hard to rule. But since this is Suetonius and he's writing after Caesar, could also just as well say Suetonius is a drama queen. And he knows how to write some good fiction. Now he had access to records we don't have anymore, so maybe those quotes were in whatever he used. But that just made me laugh because now we've got the Cross the Rubicon and we have the die is cast. It's perfect. I'm going to end it right there. Uh, I think I'm good with that. So that was paragraphs 29, 30, 31, and 32. Had a little bit of Latin. We had two classic lines. Caesar has made his move. And the only thing left after this is to see what's going to come out of it when he finally has a confrontation um, with Pompey and with the Senate, and how this guy comes back in and takes control. I will leave it there. Um, I'll try to drop some more shorts on anything else relating to these paragraphs. And I'm also going to try to get the first bit of Thucydides out as well to add a Greek reading. And I've never read that before either. So I'll do that raw, give weird me opinions, and let it go. But if you have anything you want to comment, please do so. That would be cool. If you have anything you want to correct or add about Suetonius and his writings about Caesar or about Caesar, please feel free to drop it because I'd love to learn it and touch back with you. Other than that, I will see you all later. Have a good one.